All right, we're rolling here, man. So, guys, I am beyond excited. I've been really looking forward to this interview here with Marcus, our client from Inline Canine in Rochester. And so, Marcus and I have been working together for about 9 months now, I think. And yeah, he's just kind enough to come on and kind of share his experience working with us at Top Dog Advertising. So, Marcus, why don't you just kind of kick it off, man? Tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got started as a trainer.
I guess I got started when I was probably 17. It was probably the first time I ever trained a dog. It was before I had joined the Marine Corps. My family got this nice little working line German Shepherd, not knowing what he was or what he was going to be. Obviously, we found out quickly what that entailed, and my being that I lived with just my mom and my little sister at the time, I was like, if I leave this dog in this state, he won't be here when I come home, basically, because they couldn't ever have handled it. He's like 100 pound, higher drive working, working line dog. So I knew that for them it was going to be a huge challenge without training. So looking back on what I would have called what I did with him, it was probably about a year long board and train, basically.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I had the dog off leash heeling to my bike. Like I could ride him through any crowd, any distraction. It didn't matter if, I mean, you could do anything to that dog. He would never have broke command. I had him downing from 200-300 yards away. I mean, literally like any amount of training that I've ever done with any specific dog, I would say the first dog I ever trained was I spent more time on him than I have on most dogs in my entire 8 years training dogs now. So he came out a beautiful finished product, and that allowed them to have a lot more control over him with me, leaving home. And that was kind of my first taste of you could take a high drive, 100 pound plus dog that's way too strong for its handlers and spend the time on it and have a dog that now these two women who weren't, specifically athletic, or they weren't really, high performers in any way. Like they didn't go and work out a lot. They didn't really have, I guess they didn't have the ability to really own the dog without the control that I put on him.
Right.
So, kind of fast forwarding to my first duty station was a reserve base, and it turned out a lot of reservists, they have dogs because they're not in the military full time. So I had already had that experience with him, and I had already kind of taken up, a liking and I would say a passion to dog training. So they just, kind of saw some of my social media at the time of what I had done with that dog, and they had asked me to kind of help them out. And back then I really wasn't even, I think I was charging like $25 for an hour or whatever. Just, hey, like, and I was like teaching their dogs like off leash heel and like stuff
Yeah.
now that, trainers charge, a fortune,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
teach a dog. So,
Yeah.
and then kind of getting out of the military, I had already, like I said, I had some more clients under my belt, some more experience. And I bought my first Malinois. She was a really, really nice working line dog. And she gave me a lot of experience, but kind of with her came her father's owned by a lady named Sandra Bradshaw. For the people out there that have done any work in protection sports, PSA Protection Sports Association was founded by a guy named Gary Bradshaw. Well, lucky enough for me, her dad was owned by his ex-wife, who turns out kind of got him into dogs. So Sandra's been working dogs since 1981.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
so she's had 35, 40 Malinois and Dutch Shepherds since the 80s and gone to high level, titles with all of them. And I would refer to her as working dog Google at the time, because
Yeah.
it was so wild the amount of free information and help she gave me, whether it was FaceTime or a phone call, whatever the case may be. She would literally talk to me for 3-4 hours at a time, just educating me on theory and what I needed to do with my dog. She lived in North Carolina at the time. So she kind of walked me through the whole first year of my Malinois' life. And at the time, yeah, I was still seeing clients. Business wasn't to a point where it was fully sustainable to like live off of, so working little, part-time jobs, whatever, in the meantime of that. But kind of as I became a more well-rounded and complete dog trainer, and I, obviously building a clientele through word of mouth. And I, up until a year ago, I had never even thought about, social media advertising. Like I would just post on my stuff, like doing a session of obedience with my dog or bite work. Meanwhile, there's 6 to 8 board and trains that I could have given this entire life story of, like, this
Yeah.
dog was trying to eat people. Now this dog is hanging out with the kids or whatever. So, and that's kind of been one of my shortcomings, even to now, where I don't post enough online, and it's something I need to do. But meeting you, I would say probably the biggest change that I ever came into in business was being put in front of more people. So, and I think your program is really, really excellent for somebody that is a good dog trainer, not the best in the world, but can take a dog from A to Z and give it a basic level of control for a family.
Right.
Then also is decent with sales, because this is a different type of sales. Like I've done different sales throughout my life, sold cars, done different stuff like that. But this is a different type of, number one, for the aggression cases, for most people, it's kind of a lay down sale. Like,
Yep.
2 options: get rid of the dog, train the dog, or wait till a lawsuit pops off. Right. So, and then, I think as far as just the basic obedience side of things, that's a little bit more where you need to be able to, I think if anybody ever looks into a guy named Alex Harmozy, make somebody an offer that they feel stupid saying no to. If you can do that, I mean, someone can say no, but when you leave, they're going to be like, I feel like an idiot, So,
For sure, man.
but yeah, kind of at this point, I don't feel like I have to really convince people of that much, because they know me. We've talked. They're comfortable with me. Most people are saying, when can we start?
Yep.
Not probably 70-80% of people look at me and they say, when can we begin? How can I pay? Right. I'm not like, well, we have this date and it's a really, it's if you don't take it up, then like, I don't really have to pressure people, because by the end of the process in a consultation, they've already been they've convinced themselves. I let people convince themselves. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and we're going to go through for everybody. We're going to go through like top to bottom how Marcus conducts consultations, even taking a step back before that, like how he kind of gets people to even that point of doing consultations. Just because I feel like there are, we have the benefit of working with a lot of dog trainers, and there's some people that I've been lucky enough to come across in like my career, my time doing this, you being one of them, that operates at a very high level when it comes to like actually getting a high percentage of people to sign up. And so, the thing I find very fascinating about you is that, like, you were one of these guys when we started working together, you just took to it right away. And so I think that really has to do with, like, first off, your personality you have. I think it does come to you naturally. Not to say that, like, if sales doesn't come to you naturally, that you can't get good at it and learn how to, have it work really well for you. But beyond that, I think that you've also had these prior experiences. So, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you also worked in car sales as well, right?
Yeah.
Speak on that for a minute, because that's like, that's more like that Andy Elliott style selling and stuff. Yeah.
For sure, man. And Andy has an interesting style that I think works incredibly well for him. And I think if you're more of a B-type personality, you may struggle, because it takes a special something to be willing to make somebody a little bit uncomfortable to push them to the point where they actually want to say yes.
Yeah.
Because there's that, like, for me, I know personally, like, I have a pretty low buying threshold. Like, if I showed up to buy it, you don't have to, like, I'm going to buy it, because I already know what I wanted to do, but somebody that is, unsure, or is just one of those people that no matter what in their mind, no matter what this person says to me, I have to go home and I have to think about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm just that way. Those people to me are always really fun. And like, I kind of like the challenge, because it's like, well, you don't have to go home and think about it, because realistically, like, you came here to buy, you wouldn't be here if you didn't want it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, my first car sales job was in at Nissan of Fort Worth in Texas. And the apprenticeship kind of like free program, because we were getting paid I don't know, I think it was like $400 a week to do like the Nissan sales training. And then they did like this whole computer course on like learning the cars, yada, yada, yada. But I had a sales trainer there named Mr. Vu, and he was this little Vietnamese guy, like 5'4", 5'5", very thick, accent. And he came to the United States not even knowing how to speak English, and was making $500,000 selling cars within like 8-10 years of being, in the business.
Yeah.
So, and when he started, he sucked. Like he couldn't convince. I mean, of course, if it was more of an Oriental family that he could, kind of agree with, and they felt some sort of connection, he was good.
It was like a cultural connection there.
Yeah, dude. But he could walk up to anybody from any walk of life. It didn't matter who it was, and they were like, we want to buy something from you, dude. Like you're freaking cool, You
need to get Mr. Vu on this, It's kind of like him.
I got to track him down because he had job offers from like the FBI for like negotiations. Like, dude, he was literally just so incredible at talking to people. And dude, he was the kind of guy that like you couldn't even bring an objection up to, because it was just, he was so quick on his feet. And I think though the people that are the best salesmen that I've found, or come across at least, are the ones that, I won't even say that they overcome every objection, but like they're so quick on their feet that anything you're going to say is pretty much going to be a non-factor to them. They're going to move right past it. It's right. You might have thought this was the biggest deal in the world. And like, for example, like in a consult for me, if most people's objection is going to be money, I think, at least most.
I would say that's it 90% of the time. And even if they tell you it's something else and you ask them like, okay, you drill down a little bit further, then they're going to tell you, oh yeah, it's actually really the money.
Yeah. Yeah. And, a lot of people I find don't actually even know what they want.
Yeah.
Per se. They think they know what they want. They think they know what they need. But they don't even know what they're looking for when they come in especially for dog training, because it's not like buying a car where you're like, I have a family of 7. We need this minivan. This is the only car that's really going to work. Like, when it comes to dog training, it's like a vast majority of the population is just so uneducated to a dog's mindset and a dog's psychology that having product knowledge in this arena goes a long way. Because I've had people just be like, dude, you just seem like such an expert. Like, and I don't even have to like really, because I know, Andy is a big on people knowledge versus product knowledge, which people knowledge to me is more or less just one of the most important things I think you do in any consultation or anything that you're trying to quote unquote sell is make somebody like you and make them really comfortable with being around you, Yeah. So, and I think after you've overcome that, I think that when you get down to the actual point of buy, I think that as long as they're not to the point where they're like I had somebody the other day try to pay me in EBT cards, right? Like literally like, let's go to the grocery store. I'll buy you groceries for X number of, like a couple $1,000 worth of groceries. Cause they had a lot of people in the house, all of them on EBT. And they were literally willing to give up the last little like pennies they had to train their dog. And I was like,
you had some other experiences like this as well. We'll get into the air conditioner or whatever. Yeah. For everybody who's listening, like Marcus, you had somebody, just touch on that real quick, because you had somebody like lock their deposit down with like a standing air conditioning unit or something, right?
Yeah, it was during the summer and it was hot, and we got into talking because they made up front when they saw the price. They just were like, I want to do this so badly. I need this so badly, but like, I literally don't know where I'm going to get the money. Like, I don't know how I'm going to live. And we got into talking about, Facebook Marketplace a little bit. And I was like, I am looking for a stand-up air conditioner on Marketplace, man, And he's like, dude, I've got one for sale. And I was like, would that, if I took that as a deposit, I'll give you like $150.
Yeah.
Would that lock in? Would you want to start your payment plan that way? That way, at least we could book you 6 months out or something. But I know for a definitive fact that you want to begin. And he was like, yeah, dude, you could take this air conditioner and we'll that's my deposit, And I mean, I had someone else do it with moonshine, you ever show moonshiners,
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Like they use, literal like moonshine for a deposit. I've had a lot of interesting experiences but you know what, man, bartering is never bad to me. Right. So
yeah.
I've had people pay with precious metals, which obviously, as you can see, the dollar is not as sustainable as people may like to think it would be long term. So gold and silver, that's God's money, right? So I'll take
Yeah.
gold and silver.
Like
But
Robert Kiyosaki. That's like his whole thing.
yes, yeah, dude,
Yeah.
Robert, exactly, man. So, I had a client, and listen, I never want to bank. If someone's literally like, this is going to bankrupt me, I'm like, let's reconvene in
Yeah.
90 days, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I had a client, she paid up front, everything was good. And she literally, we had already had the dog, started the board and train. I'd been like a weekend. She paid with a credit card, and she literally texted me maybe, like I said, like a week into the board and train. And she goes, I'm at the pawn shop right now, pawning all my jewelry from like my entire life to pay off my credit card payment. And I was like, if you told me that up front, I wouldn't even have taken you on. Cause
Yeah.
like, I don't, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think when you're good with sales and with people, you can convince people to buy things that necessarily like they shouldn't even buy at the time, you
Yeah.
know? So, and I've run into a few situations like that where it was just, no matter what, they would have said yes to me, but it was just like looking at their means and their way of life. I didn't even feel right about taking their money at the time, you
Yeah,
know?
we've talked about this. I've been there myself a couple of times, and it's like it's a weird situation to be put in where somebody's like coming to you and they're like, I can sell this, and like I've even had people say to me before, like I'm trying to decide whether or not I'm going to pay you or pay my mortgage, and I'm like, okay, well, this is something that's going to ideally like make you money,
Yeah.
but like we need to keep a roof over your head. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like. So that's a weird situation to be in. And yeah, I mean, that's something that you have to decide for yourself in that moment of like, is this worth it? And am I really serving this person at the highest level? Like, because let's be honest, like whenever you see like some money, a couple $1,000 sitting in front of you, it's tempting to be like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll take the money. But it's like you do need to kind of keep in mind like this is a human being and like they have other things they need to pay for here. They have kids and stuff like that. And you gotta help them make the best decision for themselves and not just like the instant gratification for you of like, oh, I'll take the $1,000 or the $3,000 or whatever it is.
I completely agree. Yeah. And like, I've had days where it's like, 8, 10, 12, 15,000 bucks in a day and sales. And it's like, it is like, like it's addicting, right?
Yeah.
Because you're looking at these numbers and growing up and stuff, like my parents weren't rich. They weren't poor, but to be able to make what some people make in 2, 3 months in a day, you're like, holy shit, like I can actually
Yeah.
do this,
It's
so
insane, man. I know. Yeah.
it's great. And also at the same time, it's like, you can easily get blinded by what the best thing is for a client if you're just looking at dollar signs,
Yeah.
So I will say I will never recommend or even undertake a program for a dog that isn't a fit. Like if it's too cheap and the dog needs, let's say, a 4 week or a 6 week board and train, for example, I'm not going to do a 2 week or a 3 week. I'm going to say, put your deposit down. We'll book you out 2 months. Like there's no reason to rush it, because if I give you a product back that you don't like, now you're going to go and say it was my fault, when at the end of the day, you may not have been, financially comfortable enough to do it. So let's just push it out. I mean, you live with the dog X number of months or years before this happened. You can control him a little bit longer to fit him into a program that's right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man. And so I just want to take a step back for a second because like it's funny we're talking about having to literally say no to certain people, and I feel like as crazy as that sounds, like I feel like most people, especially this time of year, I don't know if you guys could tell, Christmas is right around the corner. I got my tree up right here.
Nice.
But this time of year, like a lot of people are struggling with the opposite side of the coin and getting people to say yes. So I want to get into that in a second here. But I just want to take a step back and kind of go back to like you started this business, and I remember a couple of weeks ago you telling me that you were like, yeah, I mean, I didn't even realize like the potential of this almost of like, hey, you can just get people calling you off the internet. And like it's like taking candy from a baby in a sense where it's like you just get them to call, you set up a consultation, you sell them on a board and train. Because before you told me you would like see somebody walking their dog, you'd pull your car over, hop out, and like start chatting them up. So
Yeah.
like talk about like the difference there and like what you were doing before and then like just the transition into doing paid advertising and kind of like working with us.
Yeah. So kind of my primary, I'll say, marketing strategy previous to meeting you was I would go to like Home Depot or Lowe's with my dog or a board and train, a puppy, whatever. And, with my Malinois, like she's super quick and motivated and makes me look like a much better dog trainer than I'll admit that I probably am, because she's just so she's a freak, right?
Yeah.
So do like a quick session of like obedience with her, like advanced stuff, whatever the case is, really flashy looking stuff. And then it would always draw somewhat of a crowd, no matter where I went with her, and hand out cards to those people. And then hopefully if I handed out 10 cards, one guy would give me a call or
Yeah.
whatever the case was. And I had a pretty decent kind of like referral thing going to nothing like after I met you, we might have done an average month, 6, 7, maybe 8 grand. It was nothing to like write home about. It was like, I'm surviving. It's
Yeah.
nothing that I was, I eat steak every single day now, so, but yeah, I mean, the previous, I guess, lead as well as income generation, to now is obviously it's going to be night and day. And also, one thing I've always tried to stick on with, and I also recommend that people do, is conversion. Because if you nurture 10 leads really well versus if you halfway nurture 50 leads,
Mm.
you can make the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So I think if you can stick with somebody and be responsive and answer their calls and make sure that you're there for them so that they're comfortable by the time you get to consult or by the time the board and train begins, if you nurture a lead, you're good. But I think when people start to get that influx of clientele and, they're making a lot more money than they did, they kind of forget about, well, I need to maybe spend an hour or 2 or 3 hours average a week on a lead, so now they start getting 5 calls a day and they might spend 20 minutes average a week on nurturing a lead. So I
Yeah.
think conversion is major because like, let's say, like, you've probably put me in front of maybe 10, 15, 20 times more people than I previously
Yeah.
was per week or per month.
Right.
So that alone, when you're at, when I think at our height, especially when obviously before Thanksgiving and Christmas,
Yeah.
I was probably averaging, 5 to 10 consults a week, depending,
Yeah.
So with that, but one thing I stuck with and at least tried to stick with was nurturing each individual person so that they felt attended to. I answered their questions. I called them back. I texted them back. And when you start to get busy, I'm sure you're guilty of it, as am I. You might
Yeah.
go a day or two and not call someone back.
Oh
Well, in
yeah,
the time,
absolutely.
they're calling somebody else that does what you do. So now
Yeah.
you've lost money just based on, negligence, basically.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, Alex, I was listening to a conversation, an interview with Alex Hormozy, and he was talking about scaling a business. And he was like, I think a lot of times people overcomplicate what scaling means. And he's like, okay, we've gotten the business to this point. Now we have to completely reinvent it and do something totally different to get to the next level. And sometimes you need to innovate and stuff like that. But largely what it is like just doing more of and, doing a higher percentage of what is already working really well. And
Yeah.
so what I always preach to everybody is like, if you want to know the number one way to differentiate yourself from the competition and the other dollar traders in your local market, it's like, first off, care about your clients, because there's a lot of people who just don't care at all, and they're
Yeah.
just like, let the phone ring and like, oh, if they're interested, they'll find me somehow.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like just the customer service that you deliver, like you're talking about, Marcus, where it's like, following up with people, texting them, calling them, not just giving them one call and say, oh, they didn't answer, and just like, forgetting about them, like literally keeping them in a list and messaging them for, a week, 2 weeks. And it's assuming that like, hey, maybe they're on vacation. Maybe they're not around. Maybe something came up. Maybe somebody got sick and like they're just kind of focused on other things. And so, really kind of thinking about like, what did it take me to get my business from $0 a month to $5,000 a month? Like think about the amount of work you were willing to put in at that stage and like how much dedication you were able to put into every single lead you spoke to. And like, can you do that at scale? Can you do that when you have 20 people? Because if the answer is no, you can't do it yourself, well, it's probably time to hire somebody and get some help in doing it. Because there, like to your point, there is going to be somebody else out there who's like the new hungry dollar trainer who's willing to do that. And that
Yep.
person's going to eat your lunch because like they have nothing but time to do that stuff.
Yeah. And they're motivated to do it. And I think that's where a lot of people end up, at least on an income basis. They get to a certain point where they're just not seeing any growth. They might be doing, 30, 40, 50K a month, but that's the same over a year or 2 years. And it's like, well, if that's the case, there's something missing, because
Yeah.
just the way that you grew when you started, and you got to that 30K, you aren't doing, like Alex said, you aren't doing enough of what you were doing in the beginning that worked.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, like one of my best friend, he owns a pizzeria franchise, right? And we always talk about business and stuff, because the guy really puts in 75, 80 hours a week, and and he's killing himself, and he's like, I just wish I could clone myself and have that person do everything I do while I grow the business. And I'm like, bro, like, you got to let go a little bit. Like, you need,
Yeah.
like GM, you need to train him a little bit more, or whatever the case is. But for me, it's been tough, because I want to have my hands in every single board and train. I want to see, I want that dog to my standard. But what I realized is I need to train a trainer to my standard,
Yeah.
because if they're to my standard, then the client is going to get the same dog that I would have given them, but they're just dealing with a different trainer, So, and I know, if I have 5 consults a week on a low end, and I have 3 or 4, like, for me right now, only really board and trains I do is like more competition obedience, aggression stuff, service dog stuff, like higher ticket stuff myself, because I can have, one of my pet trainers do a basic 2 week, board and train just fine themselves. Like, they don't need me to hawk over that. In the beginning, when I trained them, of course, I was very, very involved, and I made sure of it. But now, more or less, it's just kind of having to step back and say, I can't train every single board and train that comes across the desk, and I can't do every single consult that comes across the desk if I'm doing that. And if I'm also training all the dogs, how am I going to be answering the phone on time? And it's like, you get to a certain point where you have to spend money to buy back your time to grow a business. Otherwise, you're going to stifle yourself. And, maybe I could, if I wanted to work 100 hours a week. I don't, so
Yeah.
I've had to give up some income to pay trainers that I trained, just so I could buy back my time to continue to grow the business, continue to get them board and trains. Because one thing I don't trust anybody to do at this point is to walk into somebody's home and convince them to spend, 3, 4, 5, $6,000 the same way that I would. At least so I don't have somebody that can do the consults yet. Obviously, maybe down the line, yeah. But for right now, I'm confident that I can close people at a very, very high ratio on high ticket offers. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I just want to stick on that for 1 second, because that's a really good point. So, talking about like your buddy who owns like the pizza franchise and stuff like that, and like this is something that we all go through as business owners. And so the book I always recommend to everybody, this was like a really good read for me, is called The E-Myth. And I think it's called The E-Myth Revisited. I think they redid it like years ago. But the point is like it's all about creating SOPs and manuals to replace yourself in like certain jobs inside of your business. And here's the thing, it's like management is a skill, and so is sales, and so is dog training. And so these are skills that need to be learned. And like maybe you're really good, for speaking from personal experience, it's like maybe you're really good at one thing, but then and you're okay at another thing, and like good enough to kind of like make the business run. But then when push comes to shove, and you're like, okay, it's time to make a hire. What I would say is like invest some time and resources in like learning how to communicate with your team, and how to properly manage people. Because the truth is, like, if you just assume, like, oh, I just hire somebody, what's the big deal? It's like that's destined to fall flat on its face. And it's like it's probably not going to work with the first person you hire. It could end up going really well, but like we've all hired people, Marcus, I know you have as well, that it didn't work out like necessarily the way you wanted to. But like that's everything in life. It's like it's all a learning experience where it's like I won't do that again. Like the way I treated that person, or the way that like I kind of like enabled the dynamic of that relationship to be, like I'm not going to do that with the next person. And so, it's just like it's a skill that needs to be learned. And I really think what you just said is really important when you were talking about I don't have somebody right now, and you're like, I don't even trust anybody to go out and start doing these consultations. That is something that I would recommend. And maybe this is my own like self-limiting belief in my own business, but what I've seen with a lot of dog training businesses that I've like done coaching and consulting for is like they give that up way too soon. They give the sales up way too soon. And they're like, well, I'll just keep training, or I'll just kind of like, do the other stuff and stuff like that. And all of a sudden the business just, takes a dive. And so what I would say is like, focus on you know how to train. Like, you know how to train dogs really well. Focus on people, finding people that can train dogs, fulfill the training, and that way you can stay in for the time being doing the really, really high leverage activity in your business, which is sales. And making
Yep.
sure that like our business, our sales don't take a dive, that we can actually ramp it up because now I have more time to do more sales and fill more training spots.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, I mean, I can train somebody to be a good dog trainer, maybe not a competition level, but the average American isn't looking for anything close
No.
to what a competition level dog would be.
Yeah.
So I can train somebody to be a good dog trainer, and I can train them to be able to answer their phone and send videos and pictures to clients and update people much easier than I can do a complete sales training for them. Because at the end of the day, it's like good salesmen, there are some that are just naturally born, but you can totally train a good salesman. I mean, like
Mhm.
I've met people that you would have met before they trained and after, where you were like, wow, like I could never imagine you even doing sales, and now you're confident and stuff. And I know Andy Elliott's probably one of the more um forward, thinkers in terms of just word tracks
Yeah.
and training people on how to respond to certain objections and stuff like that. So you can totally do that. But for right now, at least, I think that when you go into, a $500,000 home and you have a high ticket offer on the table, and as long as you say the right things and present yourself in the right way, you're going to walk out of there with $4,500 or
Yeah.
$5,000, whatever. I'm just not willing to put somebody in a position where they could screw it up, because
I
I'm going to
totally
look
agree.
at it as, I think I could have done it. What did they do wrong? And I'm going to blame myself for letting them screw it up. So I'd rather be the one to screw it up if it gets screwed up than
Yeah.
trust somebody
Yeah.
else. And I know a lot of big companies, like out here, we have like Anderson Windows and stuff. They send sales guys in to close on windows, and, people close on different stuff for different companies, obviously. But when it comes to dog training, especially when you get to the higher level, it is a very technical skill. And it's not like brain surgery or anything like that per se. But if you come in with, the product knowledge on the dog, but also if you come in with good sales experience and good people knowledge and just how to sit down with somebody. And dude, sometimes at a console, I'll talk to somebody for an hour before we even talk about their
Yeah.
dog. We
Yeah.
just become best friends, dude, and
Yeah.
um and I guess I would kind of cater to more like the people that I really get along with best are usually like for military, law enforcement, those types of people. Like we just get along really well.
Yeah.
But anybody, dude, I don't care if you're a soccer mom or if you're like this year we've had multiple. We had a heart surgeon, we had a general trauma surgeon, we had multiple people that they're on a totally different plane than me in terms of
Yeah.
like spent 20 years in school,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and we're talking about dog training now, but it's really just, can that person come in and have a conversation with you? Are you a weirdo or are you a cool person? That's the first thing I think
Oh
is
yeah.
just, before I'm ever like, let me close this guy or
Yeah.
anything like that. I'm like, dude, I want to be your best friend.
Yeah.
And truly, like I have so many of my clients that I'm literally friends with. Like we talk, we BS all the time about just life and stuff like that. So it's like, if I could come in and we can hang out for half an hour, whatever, and then we'll talk about dog training. Well, by the end of the entire process, let's say we spent an hour and a half, 2 hours together, you don't want to go anywhere else, dude. You're my best friend now. Why are
Yeah.
we, what I mean? Money is not even something they think about because they're just so comfortable and happy with their experience just becoming, kind of in short term, like my buddy. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I totally agree, man. And yeah, just like going back to like for a second, like like hiring a team and stuff like that. It's not to say that you can't do this. Of course, like you should hire salespeople. Like, we work with quite a few people who have good, really good closers on their team and stuff like that. I just think it's not the first thing you should be looking to outsource and do. But yeah, I mean, I want to get into talking more about sales with you, and I kind of want to just like start this off by saying like I think you said something before and just now that is so true. It's like, get people to like you. Like, that is the first thing that you should be trying to do, is like, how do I get this person to smile? How do I get this person to like laugh? How do I get this person to open up to me? and, you know, like just generally feel comfortable around me. It's like if the energy is off, if you're like this person's weird and, you know, awkward and they're saying weird stuff, or they're like there's tons of dead silence, it's like that's not going to work. You know, like you have to be somebody who's like somewhat, and not that I'm the most interesting man in the world, but like you have to be somewhat interesting and like somewhat be able to carry a conversation with people to like, you know, talk about other things even outside of just dog training, because that brings their guard down. Right. So like if you go in and the first thing you want to do is like, okay, yeah, like let's look at your dog, and okay, here's the program I think is gonna be best for you. It's $4,000. It's like you're gonna hear a lot of, okay, let me talk to my husband, or let me talk to my wife, or let me think about it and call you back. Versus like
Yep.
you were saying, like I know you got on consultations and talked to people like about stuff completely outside of the realm of dog training, just life and philosophy and family and kids and all that stuff before you talk about the other stuff. And then by the time you get to the dog training, it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to buy from you.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, we just dropped a 4-week board and train off last night. And I remember the consult a month ago I did with them. I remember I talked to the girl's husband. Dude, we probably talked for 3 hours. No joke, you know. And while we were talking, I said, you know, Lauren, check out your invoice really quick. I just want to know what questions you have. While we were still talking, she paid it. She put her card info and everything and ran her card while we were talking, because
Yeah.
by the time that she saw the price and she looked over the package and everything and the terms and conditions and all that, it was just, she was like, this dude's the coolest dude in the world. Like, him and
Yeah.
my husband were talking literally for, you know, 3 hours on my deck. And a lot of people just aren't willing to invest the time it can take to, like I said, like kind of nurture that lead. And I was at the last stage of really, once I show up and we're talking in person, my goal is for you to book a board and train, or whatever the program may be. But if you come off as, the moment that someone senses like desperation, I think you're kind of, you've already lost,
Yeah.
because now they're like, I have leverage. So one of the things I learned from I don't know if you, Jeremy Miner, he's a great sales trainer as well, because he came at sales from a psychological perspective and just a, you know, kind of a human social science perspective. But you know, when people want to reschedule or they want to move a call back or whatever, instead of you being like, okay, tell me a time that works best, I'm always like, well, let me get back to you with a time that's going to work best for me. And, then we can get on the phone, or then we can always reschedule the consult, because clients need to know that your time is not only valuable, but it's a necessity to people. It's a commodity. It's not something that everybody can just have and reschedule with you and reschedule again. And so when you look desperate, when you don't seem busy, when you don't seem like you're successful, people kind of, they can take advantage of you, and they could say, well, this guy obviously needs my $3,000. So
Yeah.
I guess I'll reschedule twice, 3 times, whatever. And when you have those type of clients, it's very simple to deal with them to me, because I'm just like, hey, you know what? Chances are I'm actually a much busier person than you are. And chances are you can probably wait a couple more days now for the consultation. So rather than me saying, oh, you rescheduled for today, let's try to do it tomorrow. Let's say it was a Tuesday. Let's book it for Friday or Saturday now. And now they're like, man, this guy has he can't see me for 4 or 5 days now.
Yeah.
So, and now in their mind, they're like, I might have thrown an opportunity away, because, you know, every other dog trainer they call, whether they do a phone consult or they come right out the next day, they seem as if their time can be played with a little bit more. So
Yeah. Yeah,
I
and I think
think,
this all goes back to what you were talking about before with like communicating with people, right? Because like if you just kind of like are like, well, they blew me off, so now I'm going to blow them off, and they'll have to kind of figure it out. It's like that's not going to work. But by saying to people, like getting on a call with them and like talking to them and just making it known to them that like, hey, I'm busy. I don't just have days to sit around waiting for you. And you're not going to say that explicitly, but just kind of like the vibe you're giving off to them with the stuff that you're talking about. I think it's true. I mean, like you have also just on a practical level need to have control over your own time and not just be at the whim of your clients. And people that are just, you know, like gonna, you know, if they just like if they don't take your time seriously, they're not going to take the program seriously, and they're not going to take like paying $3,000 seriously.
yep, exactly. And I think another mistake I see a lot of people make is they give out these massive discounts, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that when someone objects and your first thing to do is discount, 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 they're going, well, how did they even come up with this 3 weeks is worth $3,500 or whatever the price is, right?
Yeah,
Because it's
yeah,
like, well, if they can do 3 weeks for 2,000 and they just told me it was three, well, obviously there's some sort of one thing Alex Hormozi talks about a lot is value building. So if you're trying to build value in something that you're selling or something that you're trying to convince a client to undertake, one of the biggest red flags to them is how did he just drop the price 30%? And just me giving the objection, I'll talk to my wife,
Mm,
So I really pretty much never discount anything at all. And I was just talking to my mom about this the other day because she works in software sales and she sells like software seminars for her company and like these educational booths they do. Like she's talking to like high level executives at like Google and Microsoft and Oracle and stuff. And one of the things she said, "Oh, my job took my discount code away from me, so I can't give out these discounts." And I said, "Why are you even discounting anything? Like, what's
yeah,
it's a $50,000 booth that they're selling. Why are we dropping it to 35? Didn't you just say it was worth 50K?"
yeah,
So at the end of the day, it's like, and maybe that's a business I don't understand as much, but to me, if I can offer a 20%, 30, 40% discount, I am dramatically decreasing the level of value that the client now sees in the product. Because as much as people don't want to spend a lot of money, a lot of people see a higher price tag and they think, man, this must be more primo. This must be something that I should invest in more than the $2,000 3-week board and train, or you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think that discounting and taking value away from your products is a huge. I think a lot of people may either lose sales or actually just make a lot less money that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like a desperate move. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's a very beginner thing to do. Like, I mean, I think that you can use like discounts and stuff like that, like in certain situations, like around like if you're running specials and stuff like that, or like you're trying to fill the last spot or whatever it is. Like if you just want to help somebody out, whatever that may look like for you, I think there's a time and a place. But I think that like, it's your own insecurity and your own fear coming out if you're like, this is a $4,000 board and train, and then you just discount it down to $2,200 arbitrarily. You're telling me that like you just kind of feel like you don't even believe in the price, like you don't even believe it's actually worth that. You believe it's actually worth this. And so like to your point, I think other people are going to sense that as well, and they're like, if he was willing to drop it down that much, like what is it actually worth? Is it actually even worth 2,200? Is it worth
Yeah.
800? Not not 2K. So
Yeah.
I
And
think that like that makes a lot of sense, man. And I
yeah.
think that like what you were kind of talking about before is like being willing to like hang in the pocket a little bit longer when you get that objection, and not just have your immediate default end up being, well, I can lower the price, right? Instead of that being like being willing to have a discussion around the price and kind of ask them questions about like, what were you thinking it was going to cost, or more specifically, what is it about like the investment that you're having a hard time getting your head around right now? Or, like, and being able to kind of like help them work through and have a game plan to maybe have them on like a payment plan or something like that, or use third party financing. So why don't you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that and like kind of how you typically handle those objections?
So one thing I learned pretty quickly was that obviously America is the United States is a debt-based society already. So
Yep.
people are willing to go into debt for things far less important than a dog that's biting their kids or has multiple bites on its record already. So one thing is that I've sat with clients while they did credit apps and applied for credit cards, and then they got the credit card, or like PayPal credit's a quick one that they can do,
Yep.
and take their payment through there. So I think for the most part, and I never really want someone to go into debt over anything. Like I myself, I'm not a fan of debt. I'm not a fan of interest. I know, of course, looking at it from like a Kiyosaki perspective, you can use debt, especially on
Real
real estate.
estate. Like he's talking about like leveraging it against real
Yes,
estate. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's when you get to 7, 8, 9 figure net worth, stuff like that, where the average person isn't going to pull $500,000 out of their home and go and buy another property. And the average person doesn't even know to do that. So we're talking about debt that isn't good debt, basically. So
Yeah.
credit card debt isn't great debt, obviously. But some of the credit cards I do recommend that people apply for would be like the zero interest credit cards where they have a year to pay it off, and there's some people out there that don't have a lot of liquid capital, but they have good credit. So that works in that situation. I've had people get, favors from their family or loans from their mom or dad. And I always tell them, before you think about paying interest on the money you're about to spend for dog training, why don't you try to figure out a way to not do that? Like even if they're not financially savvy, I don't want to push somebody into a situation where, over the lifetime of the loan, they're going to pay more than the actual training costs, because I see that happen all the time,
Yeah,
with other purchases. So,
for sure.
but I think that payment plans can be a great option if you have somebody that is very committed. They're a morally sound person. They're not going to, because really for me, I don't really start services until they're pretty much completely paid up or just about to that point. Because if you're halfway through the payment plan, let's say they're going to pay you $3,000 and they've gotten 1,500 to you, and you give them, per se, the golden ticket, whatever the case is. Let's say it was a quick fix, but it was like for me all the time, it's a quick fix, but it's also dangerous, like to engage with a dog that wants to bite me. So I tell them straight up, like, I'm going to risk my safety in order to fix your dog. So that's what you're spending money on here. But and one thing I always recommend to people too, and this is where I was making a mistake before I actually met you, was like I was selling 10 lessons for X amount or 5 lessons for X amount. Now I'm very much so on board with results based, because if this costs you $2,000, $3,000 and it's literally like 2 sessions, 3 sessions for me, but they were a dangerous 3 sessions, I'm cool with you paying that personally. And I heard an example given, and it was like, if a pipe in your basement bursts and all your belongings are literally flooding and they're underwater, and a plumber comes over and charges you $5,000 to fix it, and it takes him 10 seconds to tighten the bolt, are you going to be pissed off?
Yeah.
Most likely not, because you couldn't have done that. It just saved you all your stuff getting ruined for good.
Yeah.
So, and I've had people where we were dealing with, human aggression, dog aggression, and they paid a lot of money, and it was literally like 1 or 2 sessions. But to me, it was risky enough to say, I very well may go to the hospital after this. And I'm willing to. Like, I've gotten bit a lot in my life, because I've been doing a lot of work with like police dogs and protection dogs. So this to me, like one of my dogs would bite me in a suit and it would hurt more without like neoprene gauntlets and padding than your average pet dog would hurt me out of the suit. Even though they might put holes in me, I feel like my Dutch Shepherd may break my arm in the suit without padding on. So I'm totally okay with getting bit. I've been bit a lot. And that's the nature of the beast, right? You're working with dogs that like to bite. You're working with pet dogs that are, defensively aggressive, or they're a little bit fearful, whatever. So whatever the case is, I'm okay with getting bit. But I'm telling you, this is the price it's going to cost for me to potentially get bit, period. So I think that one recommendation any trainer should take is to do everything results based. Because if it took me 2 sessions and you paid $3,000 or $2,000, well, what am I going to do with the other 10 sessions that I told you you would get for the $2,000? Rather, and I say and I always say in the consult, whether it takes 5 sessions or 50 sessions, it's the same price. We're going to work this until we finish. So when I feel like, you're a rock star handler, your dog is where he needs to be, and, we've completed the process to get you to a comfortable place, we're not going to stop.
Yeah, I love that.
I usually know how much the time investment is. They don't. And not that I really want to take advantage of anybody, but if your safety's on the line, you should be charging to put that on the line,
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, that's something that we preach to a lot of people, is like sell results-based programs. If you want to get paid for your time, just go get a job. Just go get a high-paying job. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to run a business, you should be getting paid for your knowledge and your experience in life and the results that you can deliver to people. That's the whole thing. The other one is like, that's the worker economy. It's like you're working for somebody and they're buying your time. Don't let people buy your time. Like, they have to buy, results from you. So I think it allows you to charge more money, work less. And honestly, like it's a better sell to people. because instead of being like, hey, you get 10 lessons, like people's mindset is immediately going to go to like, what if we don't complete it in 10 lessons? Are we, like shit out of luck here? It's like, no, because we're selling you a program and I'm going to keep working with you until I get the results. Now, you threw this in before too, and it's really true. It's like, inside of your head when you're selling them on this, that like, this is going to be a 5-session program, or this is going to be an 8-week program, or whatever it is. You have done this enough times where that you're not setting yourself up to be like working with the dog for a year and only charge them $2,000 for it. So you kind of have to have the confidence to be able to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a better offer. Going back to what we were talking about before, where like have an offer that's so good that people would feel stupid saying no to it. That's a perfect example of that. Like, I will work with you until we get the results that we're setting out to get here.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And the second, like for example, when it comes to what I would say, probably a lot of your clients get calls about, oh, my dog is jumping on everybody, right? Well, I'll tell a client, jumping is the second most common reason that dogs are put to sleep, because it's kind of like we're looking at the long term of it. The dog may be crazy. He's a puppy. He's jumping. No big deal. Now he's 75 pounds and he knocks grandma over. She needs a hip replacement. He knocks the kid over. He bangs his head on the table and needs stitches. That only happens so many times before somebody gives a dog to a shelter. Most dogs that go to shelters get euthanized. So I'll say to their face, let me save your dog's life. Because that's what's going to happen, is the dog is going to a shelter to die. So with obviously biting would be the most common reason dogs are going to be put to sleep. But something as simple as jumping, people don't realize that, if I let this keep going, I'm going to give my dog up, because no one's going to deal with an 80-pound dog jumping on everybody all the time for years on end. And I think we had this conversation once. People will deal with annoying, right? But they won't deal with scary. And a behavior is, as simple as jumping, to like you or me, you come into a house and a dog jumps on you, whatever. Well, it's scary when your 10-year-old has to get stitches in his face because the dog bounced off of him and he knocked his head into the dishwasher corner or something. So, and it's just, a lot of people don't understand that behaviors don't get better without intervention. It's just, especially when it comes to like biting, for example, and, puppy teething is one thing, but dogs that want to rag you up as puppies, and then they get to, 6 months, 8 months, a year, it doesn't overnight. The dog's like, I shouldn't bite people anymore. I don't think they like it very much. Like, this is the way that dogs communicate with each other. And this is the way that dogs interact. So, and I do think that, training and domestication of a dog, it does strip them of a lot of their God-given, instincts and talents, the natural things that they're born with that has kept them alive for, the entirety of their existence. But the averse to that is we don't train them and we can't own them because of that. So it's like, as much as some trainers try to preach that this is the best thing for only the dog, well, this is the best thing for the human being, and this is the best thing for the family. And if we want to continue to own the dog, this is what we have to do, so, but yeah. And if I could recommend to people, some of the stuff that I've just learned from you, most trainers are probably underselling themselves. I would say that they're probably not charging enough for the experience they have, the amount of time that they invest, and what they're producing. Most trainers are probably not selling things results based. They're probably selling it based on sessions. I think the selling things based on the hour of your time or the session that you do, it's probably just a result of the service-based economy that we're in, because everybody in school. Yeah, exactly. But I think everybody in school is so programmed to, get a job and earn X number of dollars per hour. Oh, you make $20 an hour. That's pretty good. Or you make $50 an hour. That's pretty good. So they are so used to saying this is worth this much money by the hour, and having to try to kind of please people and make people, believe that this is a good investment, when it's just so much simpler to go, this is results based. Although the price may seem high, it's really an unforetold situation to how much time I need to invest into the situation. Yeah. So just some of those little techniques to, actually onboard people and convince people that this is the best investment for their money,
Dude, that's money. I feel like you just dropped so much knowledge there. And everyone was taking notes when watching that, because like you said a couple of things there that were just like so unbelievably helpful. And I know that like if you want to help, make a sale, like add scarcity and add urgency. And I think that urgency is like really the word that came to mind when you were just talking there about like, hey, the second most common reason for dogs being euthanized is jumping, right? So it's like, even though you don't like, you're making them aware of something that they're not aware of. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like, and that's like a big part of what this is like they're going into this consultation, like, okay, well, I'll see what he has to say. And like, this is a problem and stuff like that. And we want to get this resolved. But you're making them like very clearly see how much of a problem it actually is. And
Yep.
like really spelling out for them, like, that like you're kind of talking about with like puppy nipping, that turns into biting. It's like, so why would you play around with this? Or like, say like your wife is pregnant, your dog is jumping all over people. Like, do you really want to have a big 70-pound dog that's jumping on people while you're either going to have a newborn baby or your wife is still pregnant? Like, absolutely not. And so, like, really think about like what it is that is going on in that person's life and what is relevant to them, and like focus in on that. And the other thing is like listening. So I see a big thing that a lot of people fall into, the trap they fall into is like they go out and they just want to like go off and just talk and tell them exactly what I can do, and like this is our program and stuff like that. It's like that's the wrong way to do this. The better salespeople go out and they're asking the right questions to really figure out what people's problems are. And you can't give them a solution and sell them on something if you don't even know what their problem is. And so
Yeah.
like don't fall into the trap of like thinking you know what the problem is. So like even though the dog is jumping, like you may want to go down that road of like, hey, like you don't want to get your kid knocked over, the example you use, and have to get 10 stitches in his face. But like maybe they're like, oh, that's never happened. That's not going to happen. But what they're really concerned about is the embarrassment that they feel every time they're taking their dog out for a walk and just jumping all over the neighbors and stuff like that. And so like that's the thing you want to sell them on. Like, wouldn't it be worth the peace of mind to not have to deal with this embarrassment? So ask them the right questions, So Marcus, do me a favor, talk a little bit about that, man. Like, what are some of the things like you're trying to like do when you first get into the consultation? What are the questions you're asking? Like, what are you trying to accomplish?
So one of the things I always want to figure out is, first of all, how invested are they into the dog? So how long have you owned the dog? Oh, it's been 3 years. Okay, so 36 months, we're looking at over 1,000 days of owning this dog. I would say by that point, and it's an integral part of the family. All the relatives know it. The kids love them. So at that point, I'm looking for information like that, because when they are looking at price, if somebody like I've gone to consults where somebody called me and they tell me, I just got this dog 3 days ago from the pound and it needs like a $4,000, $5,000 board and train. Well, that to me is telling me right there, number one, they're not invested in the dog enough to probably spend the money. Maybe they are. Like I've had, like I've also had on the reverse side of that, and it's more of a rarity, but somebody that owned a dog for a couple of weeks and it started to attack through the dog, and they did invest a lot of money into, a more expensive program to fix it, and ended up keeping the dog, and now they're really, really successful down the line. But when you go into someone's home that probably isn't a high income earner, they've owned the dog for a very, very short period of time, if they don't have kids that love the dog. So it's like, I'm looking for attachments, like what about this dog is special, and what about this dog makes you feel like he's worth investing the money into? It's kind of like, and not to use the example because dogs are obviously living animals, but if you just got a car and a week later the engine blows, are you going to put 7-8 grand into the car to fix the engine, or are you probably going to trade it in and buy something different, right? So and that's always going to be something that, a challenge that you may face as a trainer doing a consult down the line, is they aren't that invested into the dog. And that's okay. You know what, if the program isn't right for them based on, how much attachment and commitment they have to the dog, because they may need a more expensive program that they don't want to spend the money on a dog that just came to them, that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, you can move on and it's not going to kill you, right? But some more of the stuff I ask, obviously, what brings you to think that you need professional dog training?
Right.
Well, and what I want someone to do is give me the laundry list, because it's usually not one thing or two things. People don't call because their dog is the most perfect specimen in the world to them.
Yeah.
Usually they call because they're like, He nips, he jumps, he goes on the countertops, he runs away from me and won't come back. He does and what I'm doing is usually in the consult, if they come to me, is I have a whiteboard, right in the facility, and I'm going to list, let's say it's 15 different problems they have, right? And then on top of that, like that's maybe, let's say on like the behavior modification side, counter surfing, jumping on people, nipping, right? And then I'm going to go, well, if your dog right now, we off leashed him and he was running out to that road, this busy street, would you be able to save your dog's life? Right? Would you be able to call your dog back to you? Most people, I wouldn't trust it. Okay, so right now your dog is liable to kill himself at any time that he decides to, as long as you make a small error and he gets off leash. It only takes a few seconds for a dog to kill themselves, really.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so okay, now when people come into the house, what does the dog do? Oh, he does the zoomies, I mean, he furniture surfs and he jumps over our lap and he knocks hot coffee out of my hand sometimes. And, so then, I'm okay, well, now you own pretty much a pinball, right, in your house. So, so he can kill himself at any time. And also he's very difficult to own and control, so little stuff like that. Now, how about when you walk them, especially if it's a husband and a wife, or or there's a kid involved, usually a weaker party. How about when you take him on a walk, buddy? What happens? Oh, he drags me onto my face. Okay. So, especially if you're talking to, a woman or a child because most men, I don't know about some of the new age guys out there, but most men will handle a dog that's that's a little bit stronger, and they can deal with getting pulled. Again, annoying, but scary is my wife getting dragged down. I had a client literally that was like, I showed up to the consult and she's literally in a wheelchair. She's like, my dog literally dragged me down the street and I broke my leg. So I'm like, so I'm like, you'll deal with annoying, because it was annoying before when the dog pulled her,
right?
But then a squirrel. And it became very scary because now she's getting, her leg is in the process of being, healing, and she can't work now. And so, they'll always deal with the annoying first, but it's like, how often, I'm sure trainers out there will agree, how often can annoying turn to scary, right? The puppy's nipping. Okay, well, now the puppy attached to my kid's face for a second. That's pretty scary to people. So, I mean, I just try to figure out, in what I'm doing in that process of letting them basically just throw poop at the wall as they tell me what's going on. I'm letting them build the value in the program on their own. I'm just writing it. Okay, yeah, jumping, no problem. Okay, nipping, yeah. So by the time they look at this list of stuff, and then we go over the obedience that they need on top of that, and then we go, you know what? I think we could probably wrap all this up in a 3-week program. And then by the time that we chat a little bit more, we go over some more stuff, and then they see the price and they look at the price, and then they look at the wall and they're like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem that bad for all the problems my dog has. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah. You've made it like so first off, I love that you're like writing it down, because like that's something that's like black and white to them. And it's like, this is from the horse's mouth. These are all the problems you've told me. And so like they're staring at that. And then that price is like so much more in context, because they can see all their problems that they've told you. It's not just one thing. And that's the other thing. Like you said, the laundry list, usually it is a long list, but a lot of times people think in their mind, they're not aware of how much it actually is. And it's the same thing when I talk to people about their business. Like they think they have one problem, but then we start talking about other things, and it's like, oh, well, you actually have a sales issue, and you have an appointment setting issue, and you have a marketing issue, and then you're not sure of where your money's going. So you have a bookkeeping issue and stuff like that. And so for you, it's like making people aware of how much is actually going wrong. Man, I think that's awesome, dude. And then the other part of this too that you're talking about is like making them aware of like what's to come if they don't get this resolved. And again, making them aware of what's annoying now. And again, they'll deal with the annoying, but how it turns really south quickly. It's like you said, the puppy that latches onto their son's face, and now they got a big problem. So like I think that sometimes people are hesitant to do this because they're like, I don't want to like strike the fear of God into people. It's like, you're not doing that. You're not lying to them. You're giving them the truth, and you're giving them your experience from what you've already seen from all the different case studies you have, all the different clients. That's very different than lying and making stuff up just to make a sale.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And like, I'll use this example from a consult I did last night. the lady's she owns a family's doctor's practice, right? So she's a doctor herself, and she owns this whole practice, and she's got like this the sheepadoodle that anybody that comes up to the house or comes in the house, the dog's freaking out and lunging and and barking in their face and trying to nip them and stuff. And she's just like, I don't know where this came from. And I said, well, how long before he was, not this way to this way? And she's like, well, this has been about 6 months. This started to go. And I said, so he's become like this in 6 months. What do you think it's going to look like in 6 more months? Because I'm like, he's giving you all the precursors to, I want to bite somebody. I'm beginning to commit to the idea of it, because the nipping and all those things, that's kind of like the the dog telling you, hey, look, I'm not comfortable with what you're doing to me, and I'm trying to tell you that. Now, if that dog continues to gain confidence in that behavior, and usually the way that happens is people run away or they walk away from the dog, and the dog's going, okay, well, that worked. I got them out of my space. So they're learning to turn that pressure off through some of that aggressive behavior. And I always make the same kind of comparison to people, right? How do people get into fights? They usually look at each other, they talk crap, they close the distance, and then it's on, right? So once the dog has learned, I can get close to you, and if I nip you, you leave me alone. We're starting to get down the path of, and I always, and this is another thing I like to say to people, this problem right now, it's not that expensive to fix comparatively to what it is. Let this go for 6 more months. I'm going to charge you twice the price. Any trainer will. It's not just me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Once the dog has gotten some live bites and the dog has committed and it's turned off pressure through that, because most people, when they get bit, aren't going to crush a dog. They're going to run away. They're going to be like, oh my God, the dog just bit me. What the heck? And
for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So, now you have a real liability on your hands versus something that is, insecure, maybe beginning to get more confident in the fight or flight stage, and beginning to think, maybe I don't need to run as much, maybe I should bite. But once we move past that threshold of they're making contact, and let's say they actually commit to a bite, now we're looking at something much more expensive, because it just takes one. Really, it just takes one rep of a dog turning off pressure by biting somebody for it to be a real big problem, because they're going to repeat it if it's allowed. So it's one thing where you can tell people, although this price may seem high today, let this continue. And I promise you, the price that you get in a year from now is something that you're not going to be able to, you're not going to want to pay. So
for sure.
Well,
listen, I don't want to keep you all day, but I feel like this is super helpful information. I hope that everyone's watching this is getting a lot of value out of this. I just want to ask you like 2 more things real quick, and then I'll let you go for the day. But let's just run through real quick, like objections. Let's talk about, just give me your go-to of how you typically handle it. So if I'm saying to you like, oh man, I just got to talk to my wife and call you back, or and like get back to you like later on this week, what are you typically saying to me?
Well, one way I try to avoid that in the first place is, let's have all decision makers present, right?
Okay, that's a really good point. Yeah, they should all be there for sure.
Always there, yeah.
But if you're in that situation,
if that's the case, I always will ask, well, are you the primary owner of the dog, or are you guys kind of co-owners? And if they say, well, I'm the primary owner, but we split everything together, to me, it's one of those things where it's like, well, you own this responsibility, but you really don't take full responsibility for this responsibility, right? So one thing I always like to kind of cover when somebody makes that objection is, let's get them on a call. Let's conference call them right now. And it's like last night, the doctor I did the consult with, closer and everything, she's a doctor, her husband's a teacher, right? So when she read the invoice, she texted her husband, and he like Venmo'd me like right there, right? Like I was at the table and just got the Venmo. So I could see that, she's the breadwinner. So she's just like, Venmo him. Like, I'm not asking you, honey. I make much more money than you do. So let me just tell you to send this, right? So, in those situations where you do have somebody that's like, let me give my wife a call, or let me call my husband. Well, you came here today because you were intending to buy dog training. You were intending to train the dog, obviously, right? Yeah. So, at the end of the day, this is your dog. This is your responsibility. The reason that they're not here, or they didn't feel as if they should be, was probably because this dog is primarily your responsibility, right? Yeah. So if it's really just a question of price, and it's really not a question of packaging and and everything else, because usually people are going to have to talk to somebody else because the price is high and they need help making a financial decision. You already know what they're going to say, right? I mean, right? And I love Andy Elliott's, what should be done today shouldn't be done tomorrow, right? So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So let's
That's
start,
great,
right?
man. Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's just one of those things where it's like, really, when people tell you that, what they're trying to do is buy themselves time. Number one, maybe if you didn't do a good job, they might be trying to get away from you so that they can go and talk to somebody and truly make a decision. But number two, it's like when they see that price, they may be panicking a little bit inside, and they're not telling you that. They're just sitting there like, everything seems cool and everything like that, but they truly don't want to spend that much money. So that's an often objection I see raised when maybe I didn't nurture it along as well as I should have through the consult.
Yep.
And now they've brought up an objection like that. So usually you can solve it if, from the get-go, you make sure, like if they're like, well, my husband might be home at 5:30, but I'm not too sure. He might stay late. Okay, let's make it for 6:30, 7 o'clock. Because if you get them both there, there's no one to talk to.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? This isn't phone a friend here, right? This is
That's so true. I think that's exactly what I would recommend, because like you can't, you can try and do certain things. And I've had people say to me like that, they're like, kind of just handle that on the spot. Like, what do you think your husband's going to say? And, it's like better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, that whole thing. But if you don't feel like comfortable doing that, like the way that I typically do it is, listen, this person that you sold to is going to go and have to sell the husband or the wife or the partner, whoever it is, right? So the truth is, like, you're going to do a way better job selling it than that person is, because they just saw the sales pitch for the first time. They don't have all the information. And so you're doing your product and your service and your business a disservice by not giving yourself the opportunity to talk to that other person. So what I would always say to people is just like, if they're like, oh, I need to talk to my husband and get back to him. Okay, cool. Like, I totally understand that. Let me ask you this. Like, what do you think they're going to say? Well, I think they're going to be on board if I really want to do it. Okay, cool. Well, I know that they're going to have questions. Do you think it would be helpful for maybe us all to get on a call together? That way I can answer any questions. And that way you don't have to try and memorize all this stuff. Yeah, I think that'd be really helpful. Cool. How about if I call you at this day and time? Will that work? And then just kind of going into what you were saying. And so now, like, you've given yourself the opportunity, and he or she is going to go to that other person and already kind of like, build it up into something that I really want to do. And it's on you to close it on that timeline. But if you're not there to actually close it, because that's what it is, like, you got to close the deal and you just let them have the conversation. There's nobody at the end of that conversation to say, okay, cool, let's do it right now. They're like, oh, I can think about it. I can get back to him later on or next week or whatever it is. So I think that's really well handled, man. And so, like, let me ask you this: as far as the just general objection of, oh man, that's a lot of money. What are you doing with that?
So one thing, everybody, it doesn't matter unless you're talking to like one of my clients, multi-million-dollar, earner, heart surgeon, right? Owns multiple practices and stuff. Unless you're talking to somebody that, and some most rich people you find will be kind of penny pinchers and stuff too. That's probably how they retained a lot of wealth throughout their life, was being, careful. But, when someone says that, and let's say you're pitching a $3,000 program and their dog's 2 years old, expected, life on that dog is maybe 12. We're looking at, for the rest of this dog's life, let's say a decade, you're spending $300 a year, man. You're spending $25 a month over the lifetime of the dog. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's one of those things where, are you willing for $25 a month to have your dog continue to bite your children? I mean, and not spending that. I mean, it really blows my mind how people look at a breakdown and they can say, my dog probably has another 10 to 15 years of life. And they don't think about it in, well, if I continue to let this go, this is going to be something that isn't only going to cost me more money than training over the long term, but we're going to be so miserable. And I'll say, isn't it worth for you to spend $300 a year for your family's well-being and safety and security to know that your dog is not only controllable, but no longer a liability? And it doesn't just have to be for aggression, because aggression is probably, if there are trainers watching that do aggression, that's probably the easiest sale you can make, because realistically, what usually results from aggression? A lawsuit. You put the dog to sleep and the kids are heartbroken, so it's like, there's really the fork in the road is like, life is really good or this is really going to suck, because we're going to, but when people do object with, a financial objection, I think one of the easiest things you can do is just break it down to the lifetime of the dog. How many years does this dog have left? Average that out over how much the program costs, and it actually seems like nothing, right? I mean, and another great thing you can do is just make people understand that, the dog that you have today, whether he's a year old, 8 months old, whatever, is not the dog that you're going to have in 2 more years. So let's say he's starting to become aggressive. And what I usually tell people is that that's an expression of genetics. Because if these people are doing the same thing for the past year and the dog is continuing to become more aggressive, whether it's a resource guarding or whatever the case may be, whatever the issue they're dealing with is, the price that you're going to pay now is going to dramatically increase in a year when this genetic expression has, become something that's much more dangerous to deal with. So that's one easy way to sell it. I mean, and especially because we're dealing with what most people look at as a family member. So it's kind of like, and I don't use this example, but if your child was sick and you needed to pay money for them to get, healthy again, and he lived another 20, 30 years because of that, I'm sure you couldn't even, write a check for that amount. I'm sure you couldn't even figure out a figure that'd be worth to you. Right. So it's one of those things where most trainers, I'm sure if they haven't already figured it out, you're dealing with financial objection masked by, I need to talk to somebody, I need to do this or that. And that's totally cool, because what I need the client to do is tell me it's too much money, because then we can overcome that problem. Yeah. It's really simple, right? But when somebody wants to kind of beat around the bush and not be, clear with you about, I can't afford this, or I don't think I can afford this, or this is too much money, you have to be able to ask the right fact-finding questions to get them to admit that this is too much money.
Yeah. No, exactly. So, I think that's so true. I'm sorry to cut you off there. I just want to say, like, that is the essence of all of this, is like, you got to be able to get them to really admit the problem. By them being like, oh, we have to get back to you. Like, that doesn't tell you anything. Is it really a scheduling conflict, or is it really the money? Like, we can work out the schedule. People are going to, if it's just the schedule, like, you can still book them in from 2 years from now if you really want to. It's like, what it always boils down to is the money. And so that's the first step in handling the objection, is getting them to admit what the true objection actually is. So that way you can face it head on and just honestly be a human being, be willing to discuss the money with them and be like, hey, I understand. Like, this is no different than, like, you got a dog. You didn't understand what you were getting yourself into. Like, it's no different than buying a car, the transmission goes out and you're like, I didn't anticipate this. I didn't think it was going to be like this, It
was unforeseen expense. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just being able to like have that discussion with them and like work them through it and help them see the value in it. And like you're saying, see that, like, hey, this is not something that's going to kill you. And this is actually going to be something that's a massive asset in your life. So listen, let's wrap up with this, man. So I wanted to just ask you this, like, your business is doing anywhere on an average month, excluding the holiday season, which, obviously everyone slows down a little bit, but, between 20, 30,000 plus on an average monthly basis. Right. And so like,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead, man. What were you going to say?
So before I met you, we were probably doing, 5 to 7K a month, somewhere in there. Now the first month, I think I had actually paid you. We did 19K that month. Right. Yeah. I was like, okay, he's the truth. Right. So, and I think the next month was like 21 or 22, and then it was like 24, and then 27, and then 29. And so I think the last couple months we've probably averaged 31 to 34, just depending on sometimes you close a board and train the day that the month ends, and really I'd consider that income for the next month because I'm going to train the dog that next month. But Yeah, averaging anywhere from, and you know what? I think we could be doing a lot more. The only thing that really is holding me back would be not having more trainers on staff. So
Yeah.
I have to spend more time in the business, not growing the business,
Yeah. And
essentially,
that's
right?
changing in 2024. Like we're already like discussing stuff like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
man, like it's not like you've been able to like 5 to like 7x your business like on a monthly basis, like, just based off of having a good marketing strategy in place. So let me ask you this, man, like for anybody that like is hesitant or like concerned about like making the leap of faith and like investing in their business, whether it's with Top Dog Advertising or even just like doing it on their own or somebody else or whatever it may be, like what is the recommendation that you would give to that person?
So one thing is I think that the person needs to be a good dog trainer because, dude, you could put somebody in front of 100,000 people a year in consults. Like if they're not delivering a good product quickly, you don't ever want someone to be kind of a snake oil salesman, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's the first one is be a good dog trainer. Second thing is definitely train yourself and get some experience in sales, overcoming objections, and really advancing sales forward because that's
yeah,
really when you're doing a consult, you're advancing a sale forward to the end where they're just like, how do I pay, right? So have some experience in sales. And what you don't want to do, because this is what a lot of people screw up with, is that to walk into this person's house or for them to walk into my door, it might have cost me $100 just to get in front of them because there's some marketing budget involved. It might have
yeah,
cost me $200, whatever the case was for that individual. But I'm not looking to practice on people that I'm spending money to get in the door. And so
yeah,
don't try to get your sales experience through trial and error with the leads that you're paying for. You don't want to do that, obviously. So as long as you have some sales experience and you're a good dog trainer, spending money with Kevin, paying Kevin for his services, it's and unless you've already tried to pay for advertising and crashed and burned and whatever the case was, it will be the best investment you're probably ever going to make in a dog training company. Because if you're a good trainer and you have sales experience and you can close a board and train, or you can close somebody on a package, whatever the case may be, what Kevin's going to do for you is put you in front of hundreds of people more per year, so hundreds and hundreds more than you would have ever been able to do walking around with your dog, handing out cards, talking to people, going to events, going to pet stores, because the internet is more powerful than anything else as far as just growing a business. It's like, and I always love my older clientele, especially the ones that own business, because they're so used to that handshake deal where,
mm,
Jim did Bob's house, he power washed his house, and everything was great, and he recommended him to the neighborhood. But that's just not the way that people operate anymore.
yeah,
They hear about you online or somebody recommends you, they're going to go on Google. They're going to see,
yeah,
okay, this guy has a 2-star rating. We're not looking to hire him because he's not doing good. People aren't reviewing him well. But as long as you can build an online presence and continue that, Kevin's going to put you in front of so many more people than you ever would have been able to. You could spend 40 hours a week just trying to go out and hand out cards. Nothing can replace how many views you're going to get on Google, for
yeah,
example, on any platform, comparatively, because you could have 1 million people sitting in a house right now Googling dog trainer, right? Well, how would you ever reach 1 million people even in a year doing
yeah,
anything? You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
as long as you have the experience to be able to bring the dog from A to Z and you have the experience to be able to close people, you're good.
Yeah.
But if you come into this and you're lacking in either one of those departments, you're going to find that, Kevin's going to put you in front of those people and you're going to be practicing trial and error, and you're going to be upset because you did spend money to get this lead and you just screwed it up pretty much, for the,
Yeah.
short of it.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome
I
advice,
couldn't
man.
recommend you more though, dude. I really couldn't recommend you. You totally changed our life,
I appreciate that.
not to
Yeah.
be, like a sap or anything, but yeah, I mean, especially with, life's changed a lot for me over the last year and stuff. I mean, even outside of business. So, obviously money's great, but one other great thing is that I've been able to get in front of more people and be in more households and help more people than I ever would have been able to before.
Yeah.
So, and I think anybody that ends up making a lot of money, one concern they always should have is how can I help people? Because that's what the richest people in the world do, is they just fill a need.
Yeah.
Someone needs something and they provide it. So if you can fulfill your end of the bargain in fixing somebody's household via fixing their dog's issues, if that doesn't make you feel good, then you're in the wrong business anyway, So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's so well said, man. You got to start out from the place of like genuinely trying to help people. And yeah, I mean, dude, I'm very fortunate. You make my job very easy when it comes to marketing for you, because like you're one of these people. It's just like, just give me the leads and I'll close them. And I think there's a lot of people out there like that. And they're scared because like to make the leap of faith and start marketing themselves, because like sometimes it can be sold as something that's like too good to be true. Like this is how Marcus grew his business from $5,000 to $30,000 plus a month. Like it's how this video is probably going to be marketed. And it's like the truth is like it really isn't. Like it's just we're living in 2023, soon to be 2024 here. And think about where all the eyeballs are. Like you're saying, it's like they're on Google. I mean, they're on social media and stuff like that too. But Google has this unique advantage of there's a lot of intent. People go to Google, they type in dog trainer near me, dog trainer Rochester, board and train near me. Like those are people in real time that are looking for dog training, instead of having to try and like put an offer in front of just a cold audience of people that aren't really looking for that. And so I think that like, again, whether it's with Top Dog Advertising or trying to do it yourself, I'd be careful with that, just because you can waste a lot of money doing that.
yeah,
Or somebody else, truth be told, like I just want to see dog trainers win, and I just want to see people do well and grow and succeed in their lives. And I would tell you that like, this is the first place I would be looking if you're not already marketing yourself. So
yeah,
with that, man, like, let me ask you this. Is there anything else you want to kind of close this out with today? Like anything you want to plug or just say
yeah.
before we wrap it up?
Yeah. So one other thing I would have added to like my recommendation of you is that, Kevin isn't just going to sit there and be like, okay, you spent X amount this month in advertising. You did this month, let's do this and that. He's not just a numbers guy. You're so well worded, and you bring a great set of eyes and ears and experience to a specific issue that somebody may be dealing with the client. Maybe they just want a second opinion on responding to a proposal or a review or anything like that, where you work with like literally like 80 plus dog trainers, and I'm sure a lot of the exact same issues that people would bring up you've dealt with, or at least kind of had firsthand experience and maybe a great or the best way to deal with a situation. So you really provide a lot of, it's not like I use it every single day, I mean, obviously.
No, but you and I have become very close over the
Yes.
this year. Yeah, talking about that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. You just provide such a great way of wording things and a great way of delivering things, and just great advice in general when people do run into hiccups or bumps in the road with business. That like for example, like when you're paying somebody to market your business, you're not paying them to recommend you a fantastic book that's going to teach you how to scale a business. But Kevin has so much experience in business and marketing and working. I know for you, dog training isn't the only industry you ever worked in your life. So
Yeah.
you've been able to kind of, be transfixed in a multitude of different markets and arenas in business. So you have a lot of experience outside of just advertising. Like,
Yeah.
kind of, I always would refer to you as kind of like, not a business manager, but
Yeah.
like just being a great resource for a business,
Yeah.
to have on their side. I mean, and look, I'm not recommending your clients bring every single issue up every single because
Yeah.
that's, as a person, you're not going to grow unless you're dealing with things yourself. But it certainly doesn't, especially for a more complicated situation, to have somebody like Kevin that can sit there and be like, here's how I would kind of respond to that. And then you take his response and maybe, you work it into exactly the situation and come out with something that, and he's helped me word things that I never would have thought of the terminology and the wording of it. And it just came out much, much more beautiful. Like, something as simple as taking like a Chat GBT, generic response. And then Kevin and I kind of just comb it over and make like a nice, reply or proposal out of it, whatever. So
Yeah.
He's an incredible resource. Like the money that you're going to spend is not just a numbers guy that's going to sit there and tell you how much you need to pay him, how much you need to spend for advertising. It's really such a well-rounded human being in terms of business and just an awesome person in general,
Thank
so.
you. I appreciate you saying that, dude.
Absolutely, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem, man. And listen, if anybody thinks that I know that there is different companies that do like paid advertising and like pay actors and yada yada yada. Look, I'll invite you to come over here, see what we're doing, see that I am a dog trader, see that because I know like there's so many companies that do that, but I
Yeah.
couldn't recommend him anymore in the sense of just not only growing my business but making me a more complete business owner as well.
Thank
So
you, man. Yeah, I appreciate
yeah,
you. Yeah, that was my mission when I started this company. Is like I didn't want to just be a marketing agency. I wanted to kind of like help people. That's why we invest in like coaches inside of our community and stuff like that to really help people. Yeah, so sincerely, Marcus, thank you, man. And I appreciate you taking the time to do this today, man. I won't
absolutely.
take up any more time of your day. I'm sure you got more important things to get onto here, but
Yeah,
we'll have to do another check-in call like this sometime over the next year or
yeah.
so and kind of like follow up and see where you're at in 2024. Okay.
I would love that, bro. I appreciate everything again, Kevin.
Yeah. All right, buddy. We'll talk soon. Okay.
Absolutely, brother.
All
Enjoy
right.
the rest of your day. All right, man. Stay safe.
You too, bud. Bye bye.